Happy Mother's Day to the mothers who are here and to those who mother in many, many ways, which is probably all of us on some level. I'm very happy that Valerie has agreed to be with us today. So dear to my heart. Valerie was ordained into the Order of Inner Being in 2003, and she received lamp transmission to be a Dharma teacher in Plum Village in 2018. And personally, I find Valerie to be very warm and generous. She has been so generous and kind with me in so many ways. And she has written this amazing, beautiful book, which Valerie just told me won the Nautilus Award for, is it spirituality or, well, you can say more if you like, but this book is beyond beautiful. So I hope all of you, if you haven't already gotten it or read it, that you will consider doing that. And Valerie has also generously asked that all the dana today go to the Earthholder community, and I will put all of those links in the chat a few times during our time together today. So with that, happily, I will turn it over to you, Valerie.
Dear Nomi, a deep bow and much gratitude to you. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to us all. It's wonderful to see you all. And I just invite us to take a moment to look through your screens and see who is joining you this morning. We may have to go to page 2 of that. 48 of us here, 49. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Dear Tai, dear Sister Chang Kang, dear beloved community, it's a deep pleasure and an honor to be here. So perhaps we could begin with some practice and of course, listening to 3 sounds of the bell. So Nomi, please. Again, dear beautiful community, dear Sister Chang Kang. So shall we begin with just a few moments of practice? Again, I'd invite you to come into a comfortable posture, whatever that means for you. Often that is balancing the head over the shoulders, stacking the body, aligning the body. So aligning the head over the shoulders over the hips, and the knees over the feet. And take a moment to feel your feet on the ground. Noticing how the floor, the earth beneath you, supports you. And if you're seated in a chair, maybe allowing the chair to hold you up. And notice that again, without doing much of any effort, all of the support that you are receiving in this moment from the floor beneath you, the ground underneath your feet, and the chair supporting you. And take a moment to rest and appreciate that sense of support. And then gently scanning the body, perhaps beginning at the bottom of the feet, breathing in, allowing the feet to relax, and moving up the body from the feet to the legs and the thighs, the buttocks, allowing the whole lower half of the body to feel at ease. Notice whether there's any holding or gripping, any tension, and see if you can gently release and relax, even at the tiniest bit. And then from the lower half of the body, bringing your awareness to the back of the body, the spine, relaxing the upper spine, the middle spine, and the lower spine. Bringing your awareness to the front part of the body and feeling the heart. Breathing in and breathing out. And then bringing your awareness to the throat, the gateway between the head and the heart. And imagine that you can soften in that place of the body. And then finally, the head, the tongue, relaxing the tongue and the teeth. Relaxing the eyes, the eye muscles, the eyebrows, the sides of the head, the back of the head, and finally the crown of the head. And take a deep breath in and a full breath out. And so welcome again to this Dharma talk. Thank you. And feel free, please, to stretch in any way that's comfortable for you. Yeah, inhaling the arms up. Maybe interlace the fingers and press the palms up toward the ceiling and release. So let's put up the first slide, Nomi. Welcome to this talk entitled Braving Your Way Through Life's Daily Challenges. Give me a thumbs up to ensure that everyone can hear the sound of my voice. Thumbs up. Okay, very good. Great. So this is where we're headed. And as Nomi said, this is going to be a very interactive Dharma talk. Let's go to gallery view. So Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, Thai as he's often called, teacher, has said, our life is our message. Our life is our message. And for me, not only as a Buddhist, but as a Quaker, a member of the Religious Society of Friends, we have a saying. And the saying is, let your life speak. Let your life speak. So both of these beautiful expressions are a manifestation of a universal truth. I will be speaking from my own personal experience as it relates to the Dharma. And also speaking as a Buddhist, speaking as a Quaker, and because I'm speaking from my personal experience, this is a work in progress. I am not checking in as an expert, but as someone who is on their own learning journey. So I'm learning and growing right along with you. You know, there's this saying that we teach what we need to learn the most, right? We teach what we need to learn the most. And so I am learning. I'll be speaking about the historical dimension of self, you know, the kind of, I did this and this happened and that happened, you know, from the historical dimension. But there's also an ultimate dimension of self, right? Where there is no birth and no death, no coming and no going, no after and no before. And there's another dimension of self, a third dimension of self that Tai has written about in Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. And that is the action dimension of self, right? And so how do we put into action these values that we hold so dearly? So for me, giving a Dharma talk is not an individual thing. It's not an individual thing. We're actually co-creating the talk together. How you listen, your presence co-creates the talk with me. So during the talk, I'm going to be inviting you to reflect, to write, to speak to another person. Everything is optional. So you'll need some kind of writing device, right? So reflection is going to be a part of this Dharma talk. So someone very smart, I think it was John Dewey, once said, you don't learn from experience. You don't learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on our experience. And so experience, this reflection on experience, is the heart of compassionate inquiry. So again, I'll be speaking largely from my latest book, Hope Leans Forward, Braving Your Way Towards Simplicity, Awakening, and Peace. I began writing the book in 2019 and finished last year. And as Nomi mentioned, I was thrilled to learn a couple of weeks ago that the book received the Nautilus Gold Award for Eastern Spirituality. So yay. Yeah, it was just, wow, I couldn't believe it. Yeah, it was worth it. But I could not write the book. So we'll be focusing on hope. Yes, thank you so much, Louise. Yeah, so we'll be focusing on hope, the cultivation of hope as a skill. But before we move into hope, I have a query for you. Now, a query is a Quaker, not a question. It's more like a gut check, right? It's not something you respond to by checking off a box. It's more like a moral and spiritual inventory. So a query from the Religious Society for Friends is very different than a question. So the query to begin, and we'll have many of these throughout this talk. The first query is, why are you here? What is your intention for being here? Gut check. What did you say yes to that brought you here? So take a moment. You'll need your writing device and jot a note. Why are you here? What is your intention? Our teacher, Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, has said, intention is nourishment. We cannot survive without intention. It is the very ground of our being. Everything arises out of intention. So that's the first gut check. Why are you here? So again, this is not your life story, but a sense. And I'd invite you to place in the chat, if you feel comfortable, your intention, what you said yes to. And it would be great if we could hear from all 56 people, but obviously I'll be here for a while. But it would be great if you feel called, maybe from one or two people about that. So if you'd like to come off mute and speak your intention briefly, going to essence, please come off mute and raise your hand or speak out, please. Your digital or this one. Yes, lovely. Caring about the people and planet and compassion for myself and others, and just to grow, to learn, to be supportive, to learn, yes. Peace, to heal together, to offer and to receive. Yes, these are all quite beautiful. To be part of the life experience. Climate grief, yes, for sure. Working on healing, yes, the mess of my ancestors. Yes, we inherited our ancestors' mess, for sure. And we inherited our ancestors' resilience, both. Yeah, thank you. So love all of these, wanting connection, love all of them. Thank you for that. So the invitation is to hold on to these beautiful intentions. Remember this, because at the very end of our time together, we're going to come back to this. So write that down, what you said yes to, and then we will revisit that at the end. Does that sound like a deal? Shake your head, yes. Yes. Okay. Just checking. We still have connection. All right. So the next query is, I remember, gut check. What does hope mean to you? So I spent years researching hope, and I just want to, beginner's mind. What does hope mean to you? And then we'll go into the research. But let's hear from you. Take a moment and think about it, reflection. Remember, we don't learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on our experience. So yes, I'm seeing Andrew says energy, and Iris moving source, not letting despair take over. Kate, yes, okay. knowing that we can be better, Jessie says. Yeah, a sense of confidence. Does anyone want to come off mute and speak out to anything? Speak verbally? Pamela says potential. Yes, potential, that things may be better than I fear. Gary, I'm not sure what fee means. Elaine, a wish, question mark. Okay, so work in progress, Bryson. Yeah, so these are all fabulous. These are all fabulous. Yes. So, you know, as we were moving through the pandemic, and I was moving through my life complications, many, many life complications that I wrote about in the book. Sequential deaths, a divorce, a flood driven by climate crisis that destroyed a part of my house, the death of my father, just numerous one behind the next complications. I realized I didn't feel very hopeful at all. And I realized that hope felt quite far away. But in writing the book, I said, okay, well, let's go to Webster's dictionary and the conventional definition of hope. And so here's what Mr. Webster says. Hope is an optimistic state of mind that is based on an expectation of positive outcomes with respect to events and circumstances in one's life or the world at large. Kind of mirrors some of the things that you've put into the chat. And one of the things that I realized that the conventional definition of hope really needed more complexity, needed to be, have more oomph to it for these very complex times. It needed to be more layered, right? So I see your hand, Ellen and Barry, and I'm wondering what you have to add. And I'm also seeing, Elaine, your question. What's the action step associated with hope? So Elaine, if you'd hold on to that, we're going in that direction. But Ellen and Barry.
Thank you, Valerie. I love your questions. I've learned from Joanna Macy, you know, she's got a book about active hope, in which, you know, she goes into great detail about living the values that we cherish, even when everything seems impossible and the outcome is uncertain, living those values anyway. So it's consistent with everything, you know, that's being said, but it isn't optimism. It isn't the conventional, everything's going to be okay. Everything might not be okay. And actually everything, in my own opinion, it looks like it's going to keep on being fairly dismal in some ways for a long time. But there's a lot of good too, and just keep aligning with the goodness, you know, my faith in the goodness inherent in so many, many human beings, and hang on to my own potential for goodness and keep behaving as best I can. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen. So wise. And yes, we'll be talking about Joanna Macy and many others in just a moment. But continuing on, yes, so this sense of more robustness, right, for the times that we live in. So hope, as in wishful thinking, it just doesn't cut it, right, for the fragility, the ambiguity, and the complexity of the times that we're living in. And hope also needs to be situated contextually within the context of the structures and the systems that foster climate crisis, that foster racial injustice, that foster gun violence, right? Or that foster peace and justice and equity. So hope is contextual. An optimistic state of mind, no doubt, is important, but hope that is overly focused on desire or anticipating an outcome, we know from our practice is a recipe for suffering, right? We're chasing an end goal. So again, our life is our message. So my own personal example, through the life complications, one of them, as I mentioned, was divorce. Getting divorced was the very last thing that I wanted to do. I was clinging to a marriage, a very troubled marriage, but I really had to let go of this sense of false hope and see reality as it is and was. And as Ellen says, to focus on my values, right? So the value of integrity, the value of connection, and therefore staying in a marriage where my values were not being met was inconsistent, right, with the sense of the value I had for connection and integrity. And of course, we know from the Heart Sutra that both purity and defilement, there is no separation, right, between what is pure and what is defiled. One contains the other. And so what this really is about is choosing. Right? How do we choose? And so this is the practice of courage and the practice of cultivation of hope as a skill, right? And it takes this mind of bodhicitta. It takes a mind that is grounded in love, right? That is grounded in mindfulness, concentration, and insight. It is not, hope is not a singular state of mind. Hope contains fear. So why does hope contain fear? Anyone? Not a trick question, I promise. It's really not. Yeah, Ta says it's about the future. Sharon or Miriam?
Yeah, it's because we can't be certain.
Absolutely. Right? Anything can happen. Maria, what would you like to say?
Basically the same, that things might not go the way we hope they will.
Exactly. And Pamela uses the V word, vulnerability. We are vulnerable, right? That we may not get what we hope for. We know that hope contains courage, right? And this lovely expression from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1967, during his Christmas sermon, he described hope as a kind of vitality that keeps us moving. So King said famously, if you can't fly, then run. And if you can't run, then walk. And if you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Hence, hope leans forward. This is the direction of hope. It moves us forward in the direction of what matters most. The question is, do you know what matters most? Which is why I began with the query, why are you here? Right? What are your values? Are they grounded in bodhicitta? Are they grounded in mindfulness, concentration, and insight, which leads to liberation? And this is not easy because daily life has so many demands on us, right? But reflecting doesn't have to be a heavy burden. It begins with curiosity. So we need to periodically take an inventory. We don't wait for a crisis. And in the global pandemic, in this climate catastrophe, people are doing just that. They're asking themselves, what matters most to me? And then move in that direction toward awakened action. This is the basis for applied ethics in the Plum Village tradition. This is the basis of the heart of Thay's teachings. So applied ethics is the pathway to a moral outcome. And Thay has said that we need to question societal norms. We need to examine our own behaviors. And we do this in the light of interbeing, which is what Louise put in the chat. Do we hold the right view? Are we taking right action? Are our actions based on the 5 mindfulness trainings, the 14 mindfulness trainings, the Noble Eightfold Path? So we need to develop this moral inner compass. Thay calls this moral dexterity, moral flexibility to be open. And this is a cultivation, right? And as Ellen pointed out, yes, of course, Joanna Macy, the Buddhist scholar, has said that hope is active. It is not passive. We are engaged, right? It requires clear seeing of reality based on our values. Or Joan Halifax, who talks about wise hope, hope that is grounded in radical uncertainty. It's rooted in what we cannot see, what we cannot know, right? We alluded to that in the chat. Or Margaret Wheatley, whose essay on hope and fear says that hope and fear are 2 sides of the same coin. Fear is there because the stakes are high. We care. There's risk. There's important work to be done. There's gun violence. There's racial injustice, right? And this is where skillful hope comes in. And that is the next slide. So this is how we cultivate hope as a skill. First, there is a commitment to habits and practices. This is situated in the present moment, yet it aspires toward something, some vision of the future. The very ground of hope as a skill arises from uncertainty and impermanence. The very act of this generates resourcefulness, adaptability, courage. There's a kind of readiness. And all of this rests in the ground of interbeing. And so the next slide, again, this is all the basis for my new book. All of this rests in the 7 factors of how do we wake up. So we wake up through mindfulness, through the ground of our awareness. So we began with a small bit of practice, listening to the sound of the bell, feeling our feet on the ground. We engage in investigation, queries. I asked you, why are you here? An active exploration. This takes energy. There's both an ease and an effort. But make no mistake, this is not chasing something down. This is the practice of aimlessness. And as Master Lin Chi has said, businesslessness. I will say the word again, businesslessness, meaning I have work to do, it's important, but I am not chasing this down. I am not setting a goal in front of myself and becoming the angry peace activist. And then we do this with a quality of joy, the joy to be alive, right? This, and joy in itself is generative of the mind. It gladdens the heart. All of this rests in a sense of our own humility. It requires clear seeing because we are holding tension of what is and what remains to happen. And we do this with a quality of equanimity, right? There is a kind of steadiness in all of this. So there you have it. These are, someone asked about actions. This is the pathway of how this is done. But there's another equally important path, and this really comes from the words of Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk. So Merton, of course, was the friends with our teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, and Merton called Thai his brother. And he said that he knew, let's go to gallery view, please. He knew that Thai was a monk from the way he opened the door, the way he put his hand on the doorknob and turned the door and opened and shut the door. And so not about the School of Social Service, not about any of these things, but about the way he opened the door. So here's what Merton has to say about action. Many of us on this call are activists, very committed to saving the planet. Here is how we do that. Naomi, let's go to Merton's words. Would you mind reading it so we could hear another voice?
Sure. There is a pervasive form of contemporary violence to which the idealist most easily succumbs: activism and overwork. The rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form, of its innate violence. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone in everything is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of our activism neutralizes our work for peace. It destroys our own inner capacity for peace. It destroys the fruitfulness of our own work because it kills the root of inner wisdom, which makes work fruitful.
Thank you. Such a lovely photograph of Thai and Merton. Is there someone else who would like to read this beautiful expression from Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander? Maria.
Yeah, I'll happily read it, Valerie. There is a pervasive form of contemporary violence to which the idealist most easily succumbs: activism and overwork. The rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form, of its innate violence. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone and everything, is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of our activism neutralizes our work for peace. It destroys our own inner capacity for peace. It destroys the fruitfulness of our own work because it kills the root of inner wisdom, which makes work fruitful.
Thank you so much, Maria. So now I'd like to invite us to take some time and reflect, quiet time for you to reflect with these quite powerful words by Thomas Merton. To focus on perhaps a sentence, a fragment of a sentence, or a word. So take a moment and reread this to yourself quietly. And focus now, whenever you're finished, on maybe a sentence or a few words. And I'd like you to pick them out and write them down. A sentence or a few words. And does everyone have a sentence or a few words or a word? And just raise your hand and take your time. Reread it. Find a sentence, find a word that resonates, not necessarily in your mind, but that gut check in your body. A word, words, or sentence that resonates in your body as you read this. Write that down. And we can hold off putting anything in the chat. We're still in process. We're not done yet. So if you have a word or words, just raise your hand, the digital or otherwise hand, and so I know that you're ready. And Nomi, if you could place the quotation from Merton in the chat so everyone has it.
Yeah, I will work on that one. I would try to do it in the slideshow. It was advancing the slides, so I'll see if I can find it and put it in there.
Thank you. So just waiting for folks to have a word or a sentence or a couple of words that resonate for you. And if you do, just like raise your hand, digital or otherwise. Okay. Now from there, the next step we're going to take together. Write a couple of sentences, just kind of free write. It doesn't need to make sense. It doesn't need to be a complete sentence. Why does that resonate for you personally? Why did that touch you? Why those words? And now I want you to pause wherever you are in whatever you're doing and read what you just wrote, whether it's finished or not. Look at what you just wrote and read through it again. And now I'd like you to respond to this. Complete this stem sentence. What I really meant to say is, and fill in the blank. What I really meant to say is, and fill in whatever it is you really meant to say. Take a moment and write that. So has everyone had a chance to write what they really meant to say? And just give me a kind of thumbs up. Yeah. Okay, so with that, we're going to go into a breakout room with 2 other people, and you will have an opportunity to share as much or as little about what you have written and what has come up for you from this beautiful quote by Thomas Merton from Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander, or anything else that came up during the Dharma talk, which is not finished. The breakout rooms are optional. If you do not wish to go into a breakout room, you're invited to stay in the main room and enjoy noble silence. Welcome back, everyone. I know some of us might have been cut off mid-sentence. Time was too short for sure. What would like to spend maybe 3 or 4 minutes to hear from you if you'd like to come off mute and share something with the community, or if you'd like to place something in chat. Let's take the next 3 to 4 minutes to do that. Yes, and so the sharing would be what came up for you personally, speaking from your personal experience and not sharing something that was someone else's to share or shared in confidence in the breakout room, but your own personal experience of what came up with what did I really mean to say, or from the Merton quote. So with that, anyone can share. And thank you, Maria. And thanks, Ellen. Is there someone who would like to speak? If not, we can make a pivot and keep on going. Andrew.
Andrew, bowing in with great gratitude from the Gulf Coast of Florida. You know, what really struck me was just that modern life is innately violence with all of its pressure and rush. And what I realized is how hard it is just to be present in this moment without feeling anxious or pushed or pressured. And ultimately, what came out for me is I want to be free. Andrew, bowing down.
Is it Maren?
Yes, thank you. I felt so happy to be here, and I really felt happy that from the quote, I also felt very inspired by the part of the violence and the pressure that's innate in life, and how I really, when I wrote down what I really want to say or meant to say, was that I really want to take better care of myself. With that, to act, not act too much on that pressure, and just to be more conscious of my actions regarding that pressure and how I deal with that, and how I can maybe even protect myself better. So I felt really happy for that inspiration and aspiration that came from that quote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maren. Joe.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for a wonderful experience today. The thought comes to my mind is how valuable and how fortunate we are to have the Plum Village tradition practice to maintain our defenses, if it says this, you know, to be able to be in the world of chaos, and yet we know how, or we're taught how to not be overwhelmed, but to maintain that peace and harmony and even joy in the midst of it all. And I think it's kind of almost our duty to be as joyful as we can, just because the world needs it. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. You know, I've actually shifted a little bit with the calling for joy, and have adopted much more of the Ross Gay approach to joy, which is during a global pandemic and with all of these colliding crises, joy feels like a tall order, right? It seems a lot to ask from an individual or from a collective. Delight, on the other hand, feels much more reachable, such as delight in being able to see, delight in the colors, but delight in my breath, delight in drinking this cup of tea. There are hundreds, maybe hundreds of thousands of moments of delight that are often a flyby for us. And so rather than reaching for joy, you know, which feels like a very tall order. Perhaps we can reach for, not even reach, but notice the delight that is all around us. And to Andrew's point, the corollary to Merton's words from Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander is the quite brilliant book by Gabor Mate called The Myth of Normal. And in The Myth of Normal, and Nomi, maybe you can place that in the chat, he talks about, the stress that begets all of us, So with that, I'm going to just make a pivot because we have a little bit more to share. And thank you for everything that has been shared. And I particularly want to express gratitude to is it Iris and Erica, who pointed out the habit energy, as particularly from our ancestors, and how we are practicing not just for ourselves, but for the habit energies that we inherited from our ancestors, right? So all of this practice has to be balanced with a quality of aimlessness. It's often called one of the doors of liberation or Dharma seals, and that's the next slide. And here we have the very famous words from the spiritual teacher of Jalaluddin Rumi. This person his name was Shams Tabrizi. Right, there you go. And so, Nomi, would you mind reading these words from this great spiritual teacher about how do we move in the world?
When I run after what I think I want, my days are a furnace of stress and anxiety. If I sit in my own place of patience, what I need flows to me and without pain. From this, I understand that what I want also wants me, is looking for me and attracting me. There is a great secret here for anyone who can grasp it.
Thank you. So think about that. What if what you actually wants you back? You want greater sense of peace, inner peace, calm, connection. What if that which you say you want not only wants you back, but has been looking for you, has been knocking on your door steadily? How might that change things? Right. So what you want also wants you. That's a paradigm shift. What if we lived our life that way? What would that do for aimlessness, businesslessness? Which then leads to the next slide. So we are being called to become baby bodhisattvas, to live our deepest values, to begin by asking these very important questions, not questions, but queries. What are my values? What matters most and why? What awakened action is being called forward? And yes, this is all about something that we care about. So the next slide is the path. And here you have it. Pause, reflect, engage, and choose. Choose with purpose. This is the path. And to recap this motion of how we do this, next slide. So this is the path. of braving your way through life's difficult challenges. We have to understand that hope is contextual. It includes the systems and structures of society. It's based on our values, which are foundational for creating skillful action, which goes back to what Ellen said and Joanna Macy. It is not a singular state of mind. It contains many elements. There's fear, there's courage, there's interbeing. We're talking about applied ethics, right? Applied Buddhism. We apply this to our daily life. And this is the pathway to moral, ethical behavior. And this is all based on mindfulness, concentration, and insight, where we develop this inner moral compass that is dexterous, it's flexible, and it is a skill that we practice. And through the practice, we can become baby bodhisattvas. So the next slide is a little bit about how to stay in touch with me. So I'd love to hear from you. And please feel free to go onto my website and learn about some of the amazing upcoming events. I'll be speaking at the Christian Mystics Summit, and there's all kinds of great things coming up in the next couple of weeks. So I'd love to hear from you. But let's go to gallery view because we're not done yet. When we started with intention. And so the invitation is to go back to that. Remember way back when we started, I asked you to write an intention. So I'd like you to go back to that, take a look at that, read through that, cast back. Let that wash over you in light of Shams, in light of Merton. And now I'd like to invite us to a chatterfall to just transition this portion of our day together. So I'd like you to think about your intention, what brought you here, and one positive thing that you are feeling now from our time together. One positive thing that you are holding on to. So think about that. And does everybody have something? Just shake your head yes. Okay. And so on the count of three, not right now, but on the count of three, I'm going to invite you to place that in the chat. Maybe one or two words. Okay, everyone has something. You shook your head yes. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Affirmation, gratitude, peace, space, delight, love for all, hope, community, listening, feeling supported, yay, to be kinder. So flowers to everyone. Thank you so much on this beautiful Mother's Day, to all of us, to the mother within all of us. Thank you so much. Being elevated in community. Much love, much gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you. From Southern Finland, thank you so much. Much love, much gratitude. Yes, love to Mother Earth. I agree, Jim. So, yes, I'm handing it back to our wonderful facilitators, Simona and Nomi. Thank you. Deep bow to you all. And maybe we could close with 3 sounds of the bell and transition to the next thing.
Before we do that, Valerie, would you like to in any way share the merit, or shall the 3 sounds of the bell be our sharing of the merit?
Yes. So unless you have a formal thing that you normally say, let us listen to 3 sounds of the bell.
Valerie, there was a question in the chat about whether we can share the slides.
Sure.
So when we send out the email, we can include the slides when we send out the email for all of those who haven't come, and then the video will be posted on the Earthholder YouTube page with the slides and any other resources you'd like to include. So just let Simona and I know.
Sure. And oops, I'm getting some feedback.
Oh, sorry. I have to turn off original sound. Okay. Go ahead.
And additionally, with the book is a companion e-journal to support people in reflecting. You know, we learn not from experience, but from reflecting on our experience. So I'm happy to share that, as well as a free 20-minute guided meditation that I prepared, and can have both of those resources made available to the community here online.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Valerie, for your wisdom and your presence and your kindness.